welcome back, fellow audio enthusiasts. It is I, Jason, your host of 2-Channel Listening, and you are joining me for what is part 2 of a 4-part series on the speaker company Harbeth. Part 2 is made possible thanks to my friends at the Music Room in Ayre, Colorado. I have been a customer of theirs since 2014.
The Music Room is the world's leader in used hi-fi audio and a dealer for many of the best brands in the business. We've heard it all and we know what works.
I would say what has kept me a happy customer of theirs for all these years is the confidence that I have in their ability to safely ship products, be it that it may come triple boxed, or they know that they are going to use their injection molded foam machine, and I will get an OEM box that is encased in that foam, and I can guarantee that something that I buy from them is going to show up and operate as it should and not have any shipping damage. So if you're interested in Harbeth or just finding out more about the Music Room, go ahead and check them out in the link that I'm going to supply for you guys. Now, they've loaned me the P3ESR-XD mini monitors from Harbeth. I have my own M30s as well as HL7 compacts, and I thought it'd be a great idea to do a little bit of comparisons with the latest gen of XDs. So instead of spending time on this episode discussing the Alan Shaw years as the director, operator, product designer, etc., at Harbeth, I'm just going to dive right into what these little P3s have done for me in the time that I've been able to spend with them. But first, you Harbeth owners, lamenting how hard it is to get these grills off. If you're interested, a little hack that I've found that has helped me with all of the pictures and photography that I've had to accomplish while they've been with me is I've bought some 60-pound magnets from Amazon, and they're flush, so basically you can just stick them on any one of these corners and it'll suck the grills right off without any damage to the fiber material. And so for those of you who want to see a nice clean wood baffle, I would highly suggest those 60-pound magnets from Amazon or from whoever that will help you get those grills off. Now, let's get into it, shall we? These diminutive little speakers here. I must say that these are, for the time being, the easiest to evaluate speaker that I have yet to encounter in all of the speakers that I've demoed, owned, listened to, etc. These are also, I'm going to say, I believe the second smallest speaker that I've ever demoed in the years that I have been listening to music and swapping gear out. These little guys stand at only 12 inches tall, 7.5 inches wide at the baffle, and only 7.25 inches deep. They're 12.4 pounds. So they got some heft to them for their small size classified as a mini monitor. And I would also say, interestingly enough, when I opened up the baffle to see the crossover, that the internal bracing was actually made out of pine and not MDF. So you've got a double veneered you've got double veneer wood with pine bracing and not MDF, which is kind of an interesting choice. I'm not sure if there's any harmonic signature there that made that the case, or maybe the pine's cheaper now. I don't know. Nevertheless, I've read and I've heard that many P3ESR and older gen P3 owners complain that these speakers do not do rock music very well. So let me preface this, because that's a starting point for me. Knowing that these are so small, and knowing that they're, I wouldn't say on the hard to drive, because my 50-watt tube amp did a fine job with them, but at an 83.5 dB efficiency, they are quite low in the efficiency rating. but they can get the job done with starting at 15 watts. And so what I will say is that knowing how these speakers are set up, knowing what to expect from this little 110 inch, 4.33 inch, 110 millimeter, 4.33 inch mid-bass driver. I reset my expectations going into this. I know that I'm not going to get those huge dynamics, I'm not going to get high SPLs, and I'm just not going to get the sheer chest thumping drive that I would get from larger driver speakers. I'm somebody who loves the Zoo speakers and the Tecton speakers and even the older heritage speakers from the Klipsch lineup. If you have not heard a tom drum played at 100 dB on a Klipsch La Scala, you don't know what you're missing. It doesn't matter if you have a SVS, ultra subwoofer that's probably cut off at 80 Hertz. Your little stand mount speakers are not going to play that 150 Hertz region tom drum with the authority of a 15-inch woofer. I have that experience, and so I know how to reset my expectations when listening to these speakers. And going back to rock, setting up my system to listen to, say, 90 dB peaks, that's my jumping off point. So when I throw in Rush, YYZ, and I know that I'm going to max out at 90 dB with these little guys, I know what to expect. I'm not going to get chest thumping bass lines. And quickly, while I called these the 8/10 badasses, compromise and trade-offs is right back to the rock in that 90 dB. So, setting expectations. With Rush, not getting the huge dynamic swings and just the sheer room energy of Neil Peart's drum kit. What am I getting? What are the trade-offs? What do I really like about what these speakers could do? First off, let me say that, that's probably more like third off at this point, sorry about that. These are fast little speakers. They have laser beam focus on what's happening at the musician level, at the note level. When listening to Alex's guitar riffs, when listening to Geddy Lee's bass line and Neil slamming on those drums, yes, I'm not getting the huge room energy. What I'm getting in trade-off is insight into the space around the notes that the power trio is playing. And let me tell you, these guys really can spotlight, the P3s will really spotlight the space in between the musicians and what they're doing. Geddy has a very specific technique of how he slaps and picks at his bass. Dare I say, these speakers allow you to hear more of what his technique is, what's going on there, versus just, the overall picture of, and being a passive listener to the song itself. When I'm listening to YYZ and I'm really digging it, I'm hearing those notes articulated in ways I did not even hear with the M30s. The clarity, the pace, that speed, the insight with what these speakers can do for you. What these speakers were showing me was a new path to a different level of enjoyment. And I would say that builds on a theme of something else that I became aware of as I went through more and more of my familiar tracks. Jumping off at Dire Straits with Private Investigations, yes, you've got Mark he's right there dead center playing his guitar, and to a lesser extent I'm hearing the ride cymbals just slightly off, and then I'm hearing the piano kind of coming in around him and around the back of him. But I'm also hearing more of what happens in the studio with the panning effects. And what I mean by that is I'm hearing the keyboards and I'm hearing the xylophones coming in and out of the track off to the left. and then boom, you have the bass drum that's just coming out of the far right. And it's interesting because then you've got the shakers, and you're just hearing the mix and the different space in between all the instruments, and how some of them get louder and then quieter. And then you've got Mark going, that's the center focus, then the piano, and then again the drums. And then you just hear these compromises of how the mixer tries to keep everything forward, but you can't just be focused on every single instrument, and they can't have equal place or space at the same level, if that makes sense. And as you got into more intimate, I would say as you got into more intimate tracks and more intimate artists, going to Shelby Lynn, playing her I Am Shelby Lynn album, the track Leaving, Shelby is there speaking to her audience in between chorus lines. And so she's strumming her guitar, she'll sing with a chorus line, and then she starts talking again to her audience. I was 100% struck by how much detail was surrounding her guitar while she's talking, and in the fact that guitar sounded just slightly off left while she's speaking and strumming to her artist. I have not heard that track played quite like that before, and it was quite interesting. And again, this whole theme of panning and giving equal time, equal space to each of the instruments. Keeping with the intimate, going to Louis Armstrong, playing the La Vie en Rose. You've got Louis, you've got his trump, you've got the piano, you've got the upright bass. It's a nice intimate setting, and you've got strength there with those four instruments playing, very well articulated, lots of detail, and just truly enjoyable to listen to it as it is. In the 75 dB range, sounds just wonderful. The trade-offs are when you go to a large orchestra, and when I went to say I'm just going to play Holst, it doesn't matter on the planets album if I'm playing Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, any of those. If there's going to be a letdown, it's going to be that when you've been to the symphony and you have the expectation, you know that those crescendos are going to build up, and you start to lean forward waiting for it. You're waiting for the power of the orchestra to come in and blast you. That's the one limitation of what these mini monitors cannot give you. As that builds up and you're leaning forward and you're waiting for it, you kind of it's like you're in the car with a large V8, and you're anticipating that you're going to get thrown into the back of the seat, but you're not in a V8, you happen to be in a 4-cylinder Miata, and you're not going to get thrown in the back of your seat. Are you going to have lots of fun? Or are you going to be in something that is very nimble and is tight, and it does what it does better than most other cars? That's what I'm going to attribute to these P3s. They were teaching me to listen in a different light than any of my larger speakers, where I would anticipate just the sheer dynamics, and I would anticipate those crescendos, and I would live for that climax. With these speakers, it's all about relaxing and listening to each of the notes and the way that those notes are being played. That is, in a nutshell, what I feel were the strengths of the P3ESR-XD to me in my listening space. Now, they're very flexible speakers. As far as the setup goes, they allowed me to, I would say, go kind of more of a midfield setup. So I had them at 7.5 feet wide, tweeter to tweeter, at 8 feet distance to my ears, and I found that instead of towed in, I actually had them towed out at a full 45 degrees off axis to get the largest sound stage that I could extract from them in my listening position. In that way, they definitely were more on par with the M30s. And that's how I got the most out of them, and that's how I listened to them for the majority of my review time. Speaking of the M30s, here's another strength that I found with the P3s. The P3s didn't really care what gear I was using, unlike my M30s, where my M30s they've got a little picky, and I found that their synergy, their strong point was with my Balanced Audio Technologies gear. I've been breaking in a little budget tube preamp from Musical Paradise, the Mark II. You know, it's an entry-level $700 tube preamp, and I have that connected to my older generation Peachtree 220 Class D amplifier with my very affordable iFi Zen 1 Signature DAC. So you take those three components together, and that is by and far the most affordable kit that I have here with me. And I will say this, that the nice wide soundstage of that budget preamp with the strengths of the Class D lower registers really getting the most out of the P3. As a matter of fact, when playing my Balanced Audio Technology combination, I would be really hard pressed to say that one was that much better than the other. I easily spent half the time listening to the Musical Paradise and Peachtree combination as I did with the Balanced Audio Technology, and that in itself should say that these are very flexible speakers. Who are these speakers really good for? You know, when you're used to larger speakers, who would purchase a $3,400 pair of mini monitors? Well, for one, you know, if you want to purchase pedigree, if you want to purchase something that has a very lovely fit and finish to it, and you've got a very small space where you can't have, you know, the bass lines going through all the walls. If you're in an apartment or a flat, you've got tiny amount of space to work with. These are fantastic speakers for giving you, again, that level of articulation, that detail, but without annoying your next door neighbor or those who are below you. I will also say this, that I've seen that these are very flexible in desktop situations. So the Music Room's Duncan Taylor, he uses these in his desktop at home with, I believe, a PS Audio Sprout integrated amplifier. And more famously, Mr. Sean from Zero Fidelity, he's owned a pair of P3ESR, the non-XD versions, for many years. It's one of his favorite speakers, and he also took on the XDs, and he goes on about how it's his desktop speaker of choice for all the strengths that this speaker has. And what a wonderful near-field presentation that it can give you as a mini monitor doing its job. I will leave you with this. I prefer, in this very small room, I actually prefer the P3s to my M30s. For one, how flexible they were with the different types of front-end gear that I have. And two, I didn't, because of the smaller driver and just better integrating with my small room, I didn't have that lower overhang and that overcooked low mid bass with some of the bass guitars. Listening to my rock, as well as, you know, some of the jazz ensembles too, where that the upright bass could be a little bit overcooked as well. So I found that I preferred these to my M30s in a small room. Now, yes, my M30s in my old, much larger 24-foot deep room, those didn't have any room issues, and they were definitely the speaker of choice. But in this small room, the P3s acquitted themselves very well, and I found that they surprised me on many different levels, teaching me some new tricks on my old tracks. And, you know, let me know in the comment section, what is your favorite track? If you're a P3ESR owner, or even the old PHL3s, P3HLs, let me know, what is your favorite track to listen to on these speakers? I would definitely like to know, and I'm always open to learning of new music. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you come back for my review of the HL7 compact.